With 2 years left in office, President Obama laid out a broad vision for the end of his term. In a moment, we're going to talk to one local congressman about his reaction to the speech. Of course, we want you at home to hear from those who represent you in Washington. But first, Ryan Nobles is in the nation's capital with the night's biggest moments.
Time is running out on the Obama presidency.
I have no more campaigns to run. My only agenda, I know because I won both of them.
With now less than 2 years to go and the Republican Party controlling all of Congress, Barack Obama is turning to the American people as a way to push through a broad populist agenda.
At every moment of economic change throughout our history, this country has taken bold action to adapt to new circumstances and to make sure everyone gets a fair shot.
Many of his proposals are designed to benefit the middle class, raising the minimum wage, free community college tuition, and extending paid family leave, some of which he wants to pay for by closing tax breaks for the wealthy. The newly elected Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa delivered the Republican response targeting, not surprisingly, tax hikes.
We'll propose ideas that aim to cut wasteful spending and balance the budget with meaningful reforms, not higher taxes like the president has proposed.
The president also asked for unity in the fight against global terror, an area where he could find support from Republicans.
Tonight, I call on this Congress to show the world that we are united in this mission by passing a resolution to authorize the use of force against ISIL.
Early reaction to the bold agenda has been positive, and his approval rating is back over 50%. But it is unlikely that most, if any, of this agenda will succeed with the GOP Congress, leaving the question of his legacy unresolved.
Bill Flores is a Republican representing much of the Brazos Valley in the U.S. House, including Bryan and College Station. Congressman, let's start off with the positives, I guess. What did you hear last night in the president's speech that you agreed with, that you liked?
Well, there were three areas where I think we might be able to work together, Steve, and I thank you for inviting me to join you on First News at 4 today. The first area has to do with Trade Promotion Authority. The president has asked for Congress to give him trade promotion authority to deal with new Atlantic and Pacific partnerships. And I think we in Congress are willing to move forward with that because it's better for the economic futures of hardworking American families. The second thing has to do with tax reform, and he only hit this sort of on a glancing comment last night about tax reform. And I think he only wants to talk about corporate tax reform, but if he's willing to sit down and talk about tax reform for families and individuals and corporations, I think that we've got some areas that we can work together. The third area has to do with the authorization for the use of military force to deal with the Islamic State. I think Congress, that's something that Congress would like to attack as well. We'll have a different view on how to do it versus the way he's done it thus far, but those are areas where I think that we can have a good, robust discussion and accomplish some positive things for the American people.
I've kind of detected a change in tone a little bit over the past couple of months, maybe since the midterm elections. A lot of talk on both sides of the aisle about working together, finding common ground, bipartisanship, and the president made it a very big part of his speech at the end of it last night. Yet he has thrown out veto threats, and the Republicans have said bills that he is going to propose are dead on arrival. So is it kind of all talk at this point, or is there actual thought that folks can work together and get things done?
Well, I sat in the House chamber last night, and I picked up a different vibe altogether. I mean, I felt like we were being told that we need to do it his way or it's the highway. I mean, he said that he had his policy priorities, and that if we did anything else, he was going to veto them. So I picked up a different vibe. I think it's going to be tough to work together when you have a president who ignored the results of last November's elections. And I'm hopeful that he'll have a change of heart and come sit down and visit with us.
I think it was the end of the speech where he kind of talked about bipartisanship, but I would agree with you that there were some tones also in his speech where he said we need to do things my way. Obviously, the Republicans have said the same thing as well, and one of those issues really is Keystone. President Obama stated that the U.S. should aim higher than one single pipeline as it works to modernize infrastructure, clearly a reference to Keystone, but besides Keystone, there's probably agreement on infrastructure that improvements need to be made on a number of levels, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and Keystone's just the start. I mean, the Republican discussion in terms of infrastructure is not limited to Keystone. I think that's just the starting point. It's one where we have bipartisan support in Congress. It's also one that has 70% approval among the American people. So I hope the president will have a change of heart in terms of his veto threats. But we do need to talk about broader infrastructure issues. We're going to have another transportation bill that we have to talk about in Congress this year. The big argument is always, how do you pay for it? The president has a view on how to pay for it that's different than the conservative view. And so we'll see if we can find some common ground, but it's going to be very difficult.
You mentioned ISIS at the beginning, Islamic extremism. He actually asked for authorization from Congress to fight a terror group, which I don't know the precedents on that necessarily. Where do you see that going forward? And the president mentioned that ISIS was being stopped. There are indicators out there that there's a pretty significant progression in Syria at this point.
That's correct. I mean, I was really disappointed in the foreign policy parts of the president's speech. He talked about how great and peaceful the world is today, and then he took credit for causing all of this great stability we have. I think in real world America, we all feel less easy than we did, less secure than we did before. Then he told Congress two things. One is to butt out of foreign policy, and second, that he needed more authority. When it comes to the authorization for the use of military force, I think Congress is going to give him that, but it's going to be very prescriptive because we want him to do it better than he's done it thus far. Most everything he's touched from a foreign policy perspective is still a mess. And so I think we can do better, we must do better, and Congress we'll give him the authorization, but we're going to lay out the roadmap for him so he does it in a better way than he has thus far.
Bill Flores, Congressman representing District 17 of Texas, joining us from Washington. We very much appreciate your perspective, Congressman. We'll talk to you down the line.
Great talking to you, Steve, and I'd ask our viewers to continue praying for our country and our military men and women.
Yes, sir.